Hello, and welcome to Nice and Blunt. Today's video is going to be the Week 6 half PPR running back rankings. There's a lot of players on bye, and there's also quite a few injured. So this list is going to look a little bit weird, definitely a bit different than normal. But it's important when making those start-sit decisions. So without further ado, let's get into it. At number 1 this week is Derrick Henry, and this matchup against Buffalo, it's not that I'm really worried about it, but it is something to consider. At the moment, I got Derrick Henry number 1, but if CMC suits up, he would be number 1. At number 2, I have Austin Ekeler against Baltimore. This is a good matchup, and we saw what Jonathan Taylor was able to do through the air last week. Austin Ekeler is clearly a top 5 running back moving forward, and we saw the touchdown upside of 3 scores last week. Austin Ekeler is very, very reliable. That's why I have him at number 2 over Ezekiel Elliott at number 3 going up against New England. And the matchup is decent. New England's run defense doesn't scare you at all. And Zeke's volume has been there. He's really performing as a top 5 running back. So I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. I was worried about Ezekiel Elliott, and he proved all my concerns incorrect. So I trust Zeke at number 3 in week 6. At number 4, I got Najee Harris versus Seattle, and surprisingly, he was able to get it done on the ground last week. The first time the Pittsburgh Steelers have been efficient running the ball in forever, and it was shocking that it was done against Denver. They have a good run defense. So very surprising for Najee, but only a good sign moving forward. I think he's definitely inside the top 5 with all of those targets. The workload is there, and he's got a great matchup against Seattle, so I've got him at number 4 this week. At number 5, I have Nick Chubb versus Arizona, and we saw what he could do last week against the Chargers, popping up a 53-yard touchdown run. So I don't know if that's going to happen in this game, but I feel like you can rely on a very high floor for Nick Chubb. A minimum 80 rushing yards in all 5 games this season, and I like his odds to score. We know that the Browns are going to have to put up a lot of points to compete with the Cardinals this week. I like Nick Chubb still as my running back 5 in half PPR. At number 6, I got Jonathan Taylor, who blew up last week, had an amazing game. However, I don't know if they're going to need to put as many points on the board in order to compete with Houston this week. And Houston's run defense has actually been respectable, so I only have Jonathan Taylor at number 6. And if Dalvin Cook were to suit up, he is facing Carolina, I would have him just below him at number 7. But at the moment, we don't know if Dalvin Cook is going to start, but I think it would be a downgrade for him. Carolina is a tough matchup, and given his injury status, he's not getting the bulk of the carries. So it will be a touch split in Minnesota, and it will be a bit of a downgrade for Dalvin Cook. So I'd have him at number 7 if he suits up, but at the moment, that's Aaron Jones at Chicago. Not the best matchup, but not one that really, really scares you. And the only thing that's concerning is if A.J. Dillon vultures another touchdown. Aaron Jones went over 100 yards last week, but he didn't score, and so he didn't have a ceiling game. And that's just a little bit concerning because even though Aaron Jones has the potential to be the number 1 running back any given week, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's kind of a letdown sometimes. So that's why I only have him at number 7. I'm not convinced he has his best game of this season. At number 8, I have James Robinson, who I think is an extremely reliable top 10 play this week versus Miami. Great matchup. They've been giving up a lot of rushing touchdowns all season long. And we saw what Leonard Fournette was able to do against them last week, not only efficient on the ground, but also catching passes. So I think in this London game, there's going to be a decent amount of points put up on the board, and I like James Robinson as my running back 8 in week 6. A very, very reliable must-start option this week. Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey are on bye, so you can't play them. And that's why DeAndre Swift moves clearly into the top 10 at number 9 for me, going up against Cincinnati. And his role in the passing game is so critical. He is seeing 7 targets a game, 35 targets so far this season, and that is second among all running backs in the NFL, just behind Najee Harris to lead all running backs in targets. So DeAndre Swift is really valuable, especially in PPR formats, and I think this week against Cincinnati, there's going to be a decent amount of garbage time, and he will get those targets out of the backfield once again. DeAndre Swift is my number 9 running back in week 6. I also love Darrell Henderson once again. I had him at number 10 last week, and he paid off with 16 half PPR points. This week he has another great matchup against the Giants, who give up a lot of yards per carry. And I think he'll have a very high floor, but he will be a bit touchdown dependent. I do think that happens, though, because the Rams are going to lead in this game and kill the clock by running the ball a lot in the second half. I don't think that the Giants are going to have their quarterback or starting running back, they're going to trail early and struggle to compete in this game against the Rams. So I like Darrell Henderson with a very high floor and decent upside this week, my running back 10 in week 6. At number 11, I'm a little bit worried about this matchup for Alexander Mattison, so I've downgraded him outside the top 10. Normally, when he's the starter, he's definitely inside the top 6, but this week, I think you have to respect Carolina's run defense. They have been legit the first 5 games, and the efficiency is going to be down for Mattison in this one. So even though you're going to start him, he's definitely a top 12 play. I'm downgrading my expectations. I don't think he's going to score 20 fantasy points like he has the potential to do most times he fills in for Dalvin Cook. At number 12, I got Antonio Gibson versus Kansas City, and this is a great matchup. The Chiefs' defense has been atrocious so far this year. They haven't been able to stop anyone, and I really like Antonio Gibson's upside this week. I think they're going to have to put up a lot of points, and there will be some garbage time. What's really encouraging to see for Antonio Gibson is the touchdowns. That is what was carrying his stats last year, and that's what I was relying on coming into the year to rank him as a top 11 running back. So it's very good to see that. You need that in order for Antonio Gibson to pay off. And if he continues to score, then he's going to be a clear top 15 option the rest of the way. So the concerns for Antonio Gibson are starting to subside. He is playing through that shin injury, and last week he played really well. So I think he can keep that up and get even more healthy as the season goes on. I like Antonio Gibson at number 12. I like Damian Williams of the Chicago Bears at number 13 versus Green Bay. And the workload was there for him. 18 touches last week, 16 carries, 2 receptions, and he also scored a touchdown. I think he has a good shot to do that this week. So I like Damian Williams with a very solid floor. This is where you start to get a little touchdown dependent, but there aren't that many running backs who are getting 18 touches like Damian Williams, who are lower on this list. So I trust the volume in Chicago, and I like Damian Williams as my running back 13. I also trust the volume for Devontae Booker, who is expected to fill in for Saquon Barkley this week against the Rams. I think that they are going to be in heavy garbage time, so Devontae Booker is going to get a decent amount of targets out of the backfield, and I think his floor is going to be very high with all of those garbage time stats. I think he'll likely score a meaningless touchdown in the third or fourth quarter, but just because the Giants won't win doesn't mean that Devontae Booker can't help your fantasy team win. So I like him as a top 15 play this week, but it feels like it might be only a 1-week fill-in. Saquon Barkley should come back pretty soon. I don't think he's going to miss more than 2 games. And then Kareem Hunt at number 15. He's been really, really efficient and has a very high upside to score every single week. I don't think they trust Baker Mayfield, and when they get in close, it's either Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. So I really like Kareem Hunt's upside. Even though he's the backup in Cleveland, he's playing like a top 15 running back, and I think in fantasy you can count on him as such. So I don't think you can take him out of your lineup at this point. He's a must-start running back in my opinion. Although the matchup isn't amazing, he's going to get plenty of work. I really trust Kareem Hunt as a consistent running back 2 moving forward. At number 16, I got Leonard Fournette going up against Philly, and the workload is really the only thing that concerns you. Sometimes when they get in on goal-to-go situations, they just don't run the ball. So he scored last week. I had him as a must-start thinking that would happen, but it's not as big of a guarantee this week. Philly is not giving up as many rushing touchdowns as Miami is, so I think there's a little bit more risk than last week, but the workload has been there, about 5 targets every single game, and Leonard Fournette offers a very high floor this week. I think he's a solid start in your lineup. Defending the run has been the weakness for the Philadelphia defense. So I like Leonard Fournette's floor this week, but he is a bit touchdown dependent. I hope that happens, but I'm not convinced that it will. Same goes for Chuba Hubbard to Minnesota. I like the volume that he's getting, but there's a chance that Christian McCaffrey starts, so Chuba Hubbard would become kind of irrelevant if that were to happen. However, last week he showed his potential, 133 yards from scrimmage, however, no touchdown. I'm worried he puts forth a similar stat line this week, and that's why he definitely is worth starting. He's inside my top 20, but I only have him at 17 because I'm not convinced that he scores. We are starting to get rather touchdown dependent. At number 18, I have Joe Mixon. And honestly, this feels really low now that I realize it. At Detroit, that's a really good matchup. So I'm a little bit worried that Joe Mixon's workload is not going to be back to normal like it was before he got injured. Last week, he saw fewer touches than Samaje Perine and only paid off in fantasy because he scored a touchdown. So odds are he scores another touchdown again this week. And for the moment, Samaje Perine is on the COVID list. So I think I need to bump up Joe Mixon. This feels rather low. and I'm going to bring him above Damian Williams up to number 13. I feel like that is warranted. Joe Mixon's definitely talented, and this is a great matchup. So I think 18 was a little bit disrespectful. However, I'm just worried that he doesn't get 85% of the touches in this backfield. And Samaje Perine was very efficient last week, also scored a touchdown as well. So I think he's earned the right to get about 6+ touches every single week. And until Joe Mixon is fully healthy, I think Samaje Perine is going to get a decent amount of work. So that's why I only have Joe Mixon number 13. You can definitely trust starting him, definitely higher than 18, but I am a little bit worried about the upside. I think his volume is a bit capped. But you're still going to start Joe Mixon. This is a great matchup. At number 19 is Zach Moss on Monday night at Tennessee. And this is going to be a good game. I think Zach Moss is going to have a lot of scoring potential. The Buffalo Bills are probably going to lead in the second half by quite a big margin. And even though it's not a guarantee that Zach Moss scores, I think it's really likely that that happens. He has 4 touchdowns through 4 games this year, and even though he didn't score one last week, he still hit double-digit fantasy points with just his yards alone. So the floor for Zach Moss is pretty high, and the upside is always going to be there. I like him as a top 20 play this week with all of the injuries and bye-week players. At number 20, I got Myles Gaskin, who scored 2 touchdowns last week against Tampa. That was a big surprise. Very few people started him. And against Jacksonville, it's a great matchup. So odds are if you have Gaskin, you're probably going to feel comfortable starting him this week. And I think I'm starting to trust the workload, but I'm a little bit worried that he doesn't score a touchdown because both of his scores last week were from more than 10 yards out. If they're on the goal line, I am worried that they bring in Malcolm Brown, a much bigger back, to punch it into the end zone. So a little bit worried about this ranking for Myles Gaskin, but this is starting to enter flex territory, and he has one of the best matchups this week. So I think you can trust him as a top 20 option in this game. At number 21, I have Darrell Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs versus Washington. And I kind of want to put him higher, but I'm just not ready to do it. I am a little concerned that this workload is split a lot between him and Jerick McKinnon. And even though he is the more likely goal line back, I just think it's a bit risky to bet on a Kansas City running back this season. And I think that there's going to be a big game through the air. The Washington secondary has been atrocious this season. One of the best matchups for quarterbacks. So that's why I'm a little bit tentative about Darrell Williams. I kind of want to see it before I rank him any higher than this. At number 22, I got Melvin Gordon, who has a great matchup against Las Vegas. They have one of the worst run defenses in the league, and I think Melvin Gordon is going to get the bulk of the carries in Denver. So I like his upside in this matchup. If Chris Carson were to sit, I would have him in this range as well, probably just above Melvin Gordon. But the matchup against Pittsburgh is definitely scary, so you're kind of banking on a touchdown with Chris Carson. This is not going to be an easy game for him, but I don't think that he plays, so that's why I didn't rank him. I just wanted to bring him up in case that does happen. At number 23, I got Latavius Murray going up against the Chargers, and this is a little bit more of a running back by committee than I would like in Baltimore, but this matchup offers really high upside for Latavius Murray. The Chargers have been terrible against the run. I'm just a little concerned that maybe one of the other running backs gets involved. We know Lamar Jackson can always run the ball himself. So even though I'm a little worried, this matchup really vaults Latavius Murray into clear flex territory. I have him at number 23. I think you can start him with confidence this week. It's a very good matchup. At number 24, I got Javonte Williams in the same game as Melvin Gordon. And I'm just worried that they eat into each other's upside. So it's a little bit capped. I only have them as high upside flex plays. However, this matchup is so good, I think you can probably start both at flex. It's possible both of them score, and I like both of their floors as well. Josh Jacobs at number 25 is where I start to get concerned about starting these players. At Denver, this is a bad matchup, and he's very touchdown dependent. He's been very inefficient on the ground this year, and if it isn't for those 3 rushing touchdowns, he would not be paying off as a fantasy player. So if he scores, then 6 points is 6 points. So there is some upside here, but you're really banking on it. He's very touchdown dependent, and I don't like this matchup at all. So Josh Jacobs is only my running back 25 this week. Number 26, I got Chase Edmonds. I hate this matchup as well, and Chase Edmonds is not scoring any touchdowns. So even though he's getting more carries and definitely more targets than James Conner, I just don't trust the upside. He's the third option to score a rushing touchdown behind Kyler Murray and James Conner. So I'm just worried that he's a clear floor play and there's very limited upside against Cleveland. So I'd rather stay away. Same goes for Tony Pollard. He is a backup, but this is a decent matchup, and he's very efficient on the ground, so there could be some garbage time for Tony Pollard. Same goes for Jamal Williams versus Cincinnati. He has a decent role, but his role in the passing game is starting to be limited, and that's really limiting his upside. These are all very touchdown-dependent players at this point, so start at your own risk. Same goes for James Conner, but you know that he has the potential to score 2 touchdowns in any game. Miles Sanders has a terrible matchup, but he is the starter in Philly, so I'd rather stay away. I don't think this is a good spot for him. Same goes for Damian Harris, the starter in New England. A bad matchup against the Cowboys, though. They have been giving up very few yards per carry this season and forcing a lot of teams to abandon the run by putting up a lot of points. So I don't like the game script for Damian Harris either. I think a player you want to bench this week. Same goes for Alex Collins against Pittsburgh. I think they're going to abandon the run, and I really don't like this matchup. Sony Michel, you got to be really desperate to start, but some interesting flex appeal against the Giants. A bad run defense, so there may be some fourth quarter garbage time for Sony Michel. A.J. Dillon, an interesting backup, but this is where I think this is kind of the cutoff for me. I really don't think anyone else past this is really properly worth your flex consideration. This is a rough week. There's a lot of injuries and players on bye. So A.J. Dillon at 34, but any later than this, you are really asking to lose. Devin Singletary, not much volume. Same goes for Tyson Williams, but a good matchup. Samaje Perine, actually, I'd put Samaje Perine higher than this if he starts. I think he's definitely getting more work. I'd have him at number 29 here. Just above James Conner. So I'll take that back. Samaje Perine is worth consideration at flex, but only if he's removed from the COVID list. A.J. Dillon is still the cutoff point for me. Kenny Gainwell, I don't want to start. J.D. McKissick, I don't trust the volume in the passing game, and that's what you're counting on. And Giovanni Bernard, also, I'd rather start him than Ronald Jones, but still too risky for me. So those are my top 40 half PPR running back rankings. I'll leave it up here so you can take a look at all of them. If you got a start-sit question, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. I'll be happy to offer my opinion. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. My name's Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.